All right, good afternoon. The Secretary General this morning spoke at the opening of the organizational meeting of the 2019 session of the Special Committee on Decolonization. He noted that decolonization helped to transform the UN membership, propelling its growth from 51 original member states to 193 today. The Secretary General said the story is still being written as 17 non-self-governing territories remain, with each deserving attention. To achieve decolonization, he said, the voice of the people should be heard. The cooperation of all concerned, including the administering power, is likewise vital. His speech has been shared with you. Wanted to flag that the Secretary General's High-Level Advisory Board Mediation will hold its third meeting tomorrow at UN headquarters with the Secretary General. As you will recall, the Secretary General established the High-Level Advisory Board on Mediation in September of 2017 as part of his vision of a surge of diplomacy for peace. The board is composed of 9 women and 9 men, current and former global leaders, senior officials, and renowned experts who bring together an unparalleled range of experience, skills, knowledge, and contacts. 2 new members joined the board in January of this year, Sima Samar of Afghanistan and Juan Gabriel Valdez of Chile. The first meeting of the board took place in November 2017, while the second was held in Helsinki last June. The Secretary General met yesterday with Petro Poroshenko, the President of Ukraine. The Secretary General and the President discussed the latest developments concerning the conflict in eastern Ukraine and the areas of the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. They also exchanged views on humanitarian and human rights-related issues. The Secretary General reiterated the UN's strong support for the ongoing efforts of the Normandy 4, the Trilateral Contact Group, and the OSCE and other key actors to find a peaceful solution to the conflict in eastern Ukraine. The Secretary General and the President exchanged views on various areas of cooperation between Ukraine and the United Nations. And the Secretary General also underlined the UN's commitment to the sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of the Ukraine. And today, the government of Cameroon and the UN humanitarian, this was not to go wrong order. Just wanted to stay on here in New York. On the Central African Republic, Parfait Onanga Nyanga gave his last briefing to the Security Council as special representative of the Secretary General for the Central African Republic, and that took place earlier today. He told council members that the global peace agreement between the government and the armed groups signed on February 6 could be a decisive turning point in the history of the country, although dangers remain. He added that the peace agreement was the result of a long process carried out by the African Initiative for Peace and Reconciliation in the Central African Republic with the support of the United Nations. Mr. Onanga Nyanga stressed that the real test would be the implementation of the agreement. He called for all parties to honor commitments made to and not to betray the trust of the people of the Central African Republic. He also noted the unified political support of the Security Council, the countries of the region, and the international community would remain critical to the successful implementation of the peace agreement. Mr. Onanga Nyanga and the African Union Commissioner for Peace and Security, Ismail Shergi, will speak to at the stakeout after the end of consultations. And tomorrow, Mr. Ismail Shergi will join the Undersecretary General for the Department of Peace Operations, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, as co-chair of the principal closed, they will co-chair a closed principal level meeting on the Central African Republic here at UN headquarters. The meeting is to engage the international and regional community to ensure sustained support for the timely and sustainable implementation of the peace agreement. After the meeting, I expect to have Mr. Lacroix and Mr. Shergi in the briefing room to speak to you. And turning to Cameroon, today the government of Cameroon, the United Nations, and humanitarian partners released the 2019 humanitarian response plan requesting $299 million to assist 2.3 million people in need in the country. Humanitarian needs in Cameroon have risen by a third this year alone, owing to an upsurge in insecurity and violence, leaving 1 in 6 people, mostly women and children, requiring assistance. This year, around 4.3 million people need urgent assistance. More information online. And turning to the Middle East, as fighting in the areas of Hajin and Syria Deir ez-Zor governorate appears to reach its final stages, Thousands of women, men, children, and men are expected to be evacuated and moved towards Al-Hol camp in Al-Hasaka Governorate in the coming days. Those who are moving north have been trapped in Daesh-held areas with limited or no access to health, basic services, basic goods, and humanitarian assistance. Many are arriving in critical conditions, with at least 61 children having died during their journey out of Hajin shortly after arriving in the camp. The UN and its partners are continuing to scale up efforts to accommodate and provide assistance to the people arriving in Al-Hol camp. Its population is already at maximum capacity, with some 41,000 people living there, including 30,000 who have arrived since December. A transit point has also been set up between Hajin and Al-Hol to provide assistance for the arduous journey to the camp. The UN continues to call on all parties to take every possible measure to protect civilians and ensure the displaced have access to assistance and protection services, including emergency health care as they leave Hajin. And a measles and rubella vaccination campaign led by the World Health Organization, UNICEF, has now reached 12 million children in Yemen. The campaign, which wrapped up today, reached 90% of children targeted. Despite challenging conditions, WHO teams and health workers were able to reach high-risk areas, marginalized communities, and camps for internally displaced people. And I want to flag that tomorrow at 9 a.m. in the GA Hall, the Secretary General will open the UN Associations of the U.S.'s Global Engagement Summit. The Secretary General will deliver a keynote address to some 1,500 U.S. high school and college students and share a, quote, call to action for them to take local actions to tackle climate change. The event will be open to you and also streamed online. And today is the mother of all days. What day is today? Exactly, International Mother Language Day. This year, the Ombudsman's Office is inviting people to send them their favorite proverb in their mother tongue about peace, well-being, and other topics. A compilation of the proverbs will be published on their website and social media. You can find more online. And today, we say thank you to Turkey for having joined the honor roll, which is now up to. You're all pathetic. 57. All right, go ahead. I'm ready. Yes, sir. Excellent. Is that your mother tongue, or Scottish your mother tongue?
I think we know the answer to that.
Okay, all right.
Stefan, what is the reason for the U.S. Secretary of State's previously unannounced visit to the Secretary General today?
Well, it's announced because it was just confirmed this afternoon. The Secretary of State has requested to see the Secretary General, and of course, Secretary General is more than happy to see him, and we hope to get a readout afterwards. Madame.
The first one is we received a notification by the lawyer of Juan Guaido. He sent a complaint to the Special Rapporteur for the Justice of the United Nations and complaining about the treatment that Juan Guaido and members of the Assembly are receiving in terms of investigations opened by the tribunal in Venezuela. And then the second question is, we received some letters that were sent by the mission of Venezuela to different members, and one of them included a letter that will be, according to what it was said, it was going to be sent to the Secretary General complaining or making him aware of their concern of possible military action to Venezuela by one of the member states. Have the Secretary General...
I mean, we checked a few minutes ago. We had now received the letter from the mission of Venezuela. That sometimes things take a while to get through the pipeline, but obviously once it's received, it will be looked at. On your first question, that's a question really to address to the special rapporteurs. People are free to obviously reach out to special rapporteurs. That's what they're there for.
Is any concern by the Secretary General of the lack of independency between powers in Venezuela, like the Justice Department and then the government?
I think the Secretary General broadly has raised his concerns about the situation in Venezuela, and again, I think encouraged and called for a solution that will come out of serious political negotiations. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Stefan. Hatim El-Gamasi from NE.TV. Regarding the decolonization issue, I looked up the list of the 17 territories recognized by the UN as non-self-governing territories. I didn't see the Palestinian territories of Gaza, West Bank, and East Jerusalem on that list. So I'm just curious, aren't the Palestinian territories considered colonization territories by the UN?
If it's the member states, it is not the Secretary General's role to put countries on that list. That's an issue for the committee itself and for member states. On the issue of the peace process between Israelis and Palestinians, I think Mr. Mladenov spoke at length about it yesterday. Carol.
Stefan, back to the meeting with Secretary Pompeo. Can you tell us what might be discussed at this meeting?
I think there are all sorts of topics du jour that will come up. That I would not be surprised if they do come up. But again, the meeting was requested by the U.S. side, so we'll wait and see what the readout is. Shauna, then we'll go.
Hi, Stefan. There's a report out there circulating that Ambassador Kim Song has admitted his country lacks food to feed his people.
Can you speak a bit louder?
Sorry. There's a report that Ambassador Kim Song, the North Korean ambassador, has admitted that his country lacks food to feed people. Mm-hmm. Is there any communication of that message to the UN? And what is your response to that?
Sure. I mean, our country team in Pyongyang has been and continues to be in touch with the government. I think we've expressed and will continue to express our concern about the deteriorating food security situation in the DPRK. The government has requested assistance from the international humanitarian organizations present in the country to address the impact of food security situation. The 2018 figures of food production that were shared by the government with the UN and our country team shows there is a food gap of about 1.4 million tons expected for 2019, and that's crops including rice, wheat, potato, and soybeans. So we're continuing to consult with the government to further understand the impact of food security on the most vulnerable people in order to take early action to address the humanitarian needs. I don't know if there was a specific letter, but I know this is discussions that have been that are going on between the UN and the DPRK at various levels. Mr. Avni.
I hope this is not politicized in any way. On the meeting between the Secretary of State and Secretary General, wow, very secretariat.
Yeah.
So it's not a secret that the U.S. has recognized the government of Guaido, while the Secretary General wants negotiations between the government of Guaido and as of yet, there's no accreditation change as far as the UN is concerned. Is that correct?
That's correct. I'm not aware. I've been checking with our colleagues on the Credentials Committee, but there's no. I'm not aware of any meeting of the Credentials Committee.
And there's no communication from the U.S. when they ask for the meeting that this might come up as a topic, or is there?
I think I don't want to prejudge a meeting. We're looking forward to the discussion with the Secretary of State. Obviously, there are a whole host of issues of which the Secretary General and the Secretary of State can, and I'm sure will discuss.
And on the accreditation issue, technically, is it up to the Security Council or the General Assembly or the Secretary General to determine?
The issue of credentials is one that is determined by member states through the Credentials Committee. But for further details, I would advise you to talk to my colleagues in the President of the General Assembly's office.
And the Credential Committee is governed by?
It is chaired by Palau.
It's governed by the
body
of the UN?
It's a committee of the General Assembly, as far as I understand it. Mr. Barada.
Thank you, Stefan. What's the latest developments regarding the implementing the agreement in Hodeida? And if there is no developments, what's the situation?
No developments doesn't mean bad. The fact that we've got nothing to announce doesn't mean we're going. doesn't mean bad news. We're waiting for the full implementation. The parties are committed to it, and as soon as we have something to announce, we will. This is a long and arduous. This has been a long and arduous road since Stockholm, and I think we just patience.
Why then Mr. Griffiths rushed into setting some
I don't. I had a different read of Mr. Griffiths' speech. I don't think he rushed into anything. I don't think we've been rushing into anything. We've been pushing the parties. I don't think we've been rushing into anything. Again, when we have something to announce, we will.
Is there anybody who is trying to put obstacles in ahead?
I'm not going to get into that level of granularity here. The parties have told us they're committed to the implementation, and we look forward to that implementation.
On other issue, when is Mr. Pedersen coming to New York? I know he's due.
I'll check. I don't know. We should just check the Security Council schedule. I'll check. Okay. James.
Thanks, Stefan. So the question is about this woman, an ISIS bride, Huda Mathana, who wants to come back to the United States. Mr. Pompeo and Mr. Trump, they say that she's not a U.S. citizen. Apparently, they might be right, they might be wrong, but what it hinges on is whether or not her father was actually a serving Yemeni diplomat here in this building at the time of her birth. If he was a diplomat, then she would not get birthright citizenship. But if his term had come to an end, as I think the claim is, then she might be entitled to U.S. citizenship. Do you guys keep a record back then from the 1990s about who was and who wasn't a serving diplomat of the mission? And have you had any communications with U.S. officials about this issue?
No, I don't think I'll venture to say I don't think we have. And it's really, the visas to enter and the visas that give people diplomatic status are different. And I'll speak. I'm not speaking about this case, but in principle, you have people working for permanent missions that have different status, but those statuses are really granted by visas, through visas by the United States. So that's a question that, the granting of diplomatic visas, diplomatic status, is one that is granted by the host country of any UN entity. So that is really a question for the United States. Carol, did you already ask a question? Well, you have the mic, so go ahead. And then Massoud. Sorry, I'm getting old. Carol, go ahead.
Carol wants to go. She can go ahead.
You guys are matching today. Let Carol go first, Massoud.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a memo.
There was a memo, yeah, which I didn't get.
Okay, it's about India and Pakistan. Sorry?
Go ahead, Massoud.
Okay. About India and Pakistan. The Secretary General has been calling for dialogue between them and to diffuse the tensions and all that. He has even, in the latest statement that I saw, he called for accountability. What exactly does he mean by accountability, and will the accountability be on both sides or only for one?
I think what he was talking about is the accountability, if I reread the statement, the accountability referring to the attack, the suicide terrorist attack that took place in Kashmir.
So basically, has India accepted his offer of good offices?
I think if we had anything to report on that, we would, and I think you read the newspapers as much as I do. Carol.
Just to get back to Venezuela, Juan Guaido has announced today he's headed to the border with Colombia and hoping to bring foreign aid into the country. Is the Secretary General involved in talks at this point, trying to diffuse what could turn into a nasty situation there?
The Secretary General is in touch, and Secretary General and various UN officials have been in touch with various parties involved in this. Mario. The message for the Secretary General is that his good offices always remain available and for the depolitization of humanitarian aid. Mario.
Just to follow up, is there a concern on what can happen on February 23rd now that the date is approaching? I think the Venezuelan government just announced they're closing the border with Brazil and might do the same with Colombia. And will the ESG discuss this with Secretary Pompeo today?
I think again, I don't want to prejudge what will be discussed, but I think the situation in Venezuela may very well come up in the discussions. I think that would be a safe bet. The concern is always when you have a situation where tensions are rising, is that for people to get hurt. So we're obviously looking at in the days ahead. We may have a bit more to say on this closer to the date. But the Secretary General continues to feel that the only way out of this current crisis is through negotiated serious political negotiations. Yes, sir.
This matter of accountability for the terrorist attack, does it apply also to the masterminds of the attack who are not based in India, and also the organization that's claimed responsibility for it?
What the Secretary General would like to see is accountability. Thank you all. See you tomorrow. Why not, right?